color reception. If you could take a seat, we will begin our reception with a nice little performance from Hyde Square Task Force and Sean Honolulu. And enjoy.
Thank you all very much. Hello, yes, great. So welcome everyone, and actually before our artists actually leave the entire space, I wanted to say a very special thank you to Xiaopeng Lu and the performers from the Hyde Square Task Force, and open up to questions if anybody had any questions. This particular performance was designed for today's event. It was a collaborative effort designed for today. So we thought we'd see if anybody had any questions or comments they wanted to share. We'd welcome them. Anybody else?
How long have you been doing it? What's the name of this particular piece?
This was our second time playing together. So we had one intensive rehearsal last week where we brought our different forms together and came up with a plan, and we did a little work before today's event. So.
I'm Amy Tejeda. I'm the music coordinator for the youth team here. So these young people have been working to learn music actually since October. So they actually did not know any music prior to being in High Square Task Force. So they all, you guys can squeeze on in. So they all learned from Cornell to perform in this media, in this style of music. So.
And so thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. Another round of applause. So on behalf of the board and staff of Associated Grantmakers, I want to thank you and welcome you. Thank you for coming and welcome you to our 8th Grantmakers of Color program. I'm Jeff Poulos, the Executive Director of Associated Grantmakers, and this is one of our most well-attended programs of the year. As you can see around the room, the number of people that attend, so we're delighted to have you here. Many of you know that I come from an arts background, and so I'm particularly pleased that we were able to open today's program with a little bit of art, and so very, very grateful for that. For nearly a dozen years, I worked at the Huntington Theater Company here in Boston, and theater for me, it's an art form that allows a person to share with another the sense of what it is to be human. Often it can be a reflection of humanity, an opportunity to see what you already know or immerse yourself into what you don't know. When I was at the Huntington, I had the great fortune to work with, or to meet and work alongside August Wilson, who's considered one of the greatest American playwrights, and author of a 10-play cycle. Each play represents a different decade in the 20th century. Familiar titles might be The Piano Lesson, Fences, Jitney, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I see Lois is nodding her head. You subscriber to the Huntington, you've seen them all. I read a quote recently by Mr. Wilson that really resonated with me as it connects for me the power of art, how it's a reflection of the commonalities among us. Wilson said about his writing for the stage, "I'm trying to take culture and put it on stage. Demonstrate it is capable of sustaining you. There is no idea that can't be contained by life. Asian life, European life, certainly black life. My plays are about love, honor, duty, betrayal. Things humans have written about since the beginning of time." We recognize in ourselves, regardless of our differences, because in fact we see our similarities and become more empathetic as a result, which makes us better philanthropists, of course. Today we're going to hear from a great representation of our philanthropic community, reflect on the work we are doing now, what more we can be doing, what differently we can be doing. We'll hear from colleagues from the affinity groups, get an update on local action on diversity and inclusion from the AGM Diversity Committee, learn more of the recent, we had a pre-reception survey. We'll hear a little bit about the results from that, which will be shared by Ramani Sripada, who, if you haven't met, Ramani is the newly appointed Director of Member Programs and Services at AGM. Welcome. She actually hasn't officially started yet, but you'll see that we've been roping her into an event here and an event there. She'll also be at our annual meeting, so thank you for joining us. We're delighted to have you. Of course, we'll have a little food. You can't have an event with having some food. I want to call your attention before the next speaker to give a special shout out and thanks to the working committee for this program. You'll see on your agenda at the bottom, we name them all, and I'd love them to stand and get a little round of applause and acknowledgement. Some of them couldn't be here today, but they did help work on the event. So we've got Delia Arellano Weddleton, Hershey Basuego, Bethia Carter, Jessica Del Rosario, Deborah Farrar Parkman, Nikisha Lewis, Marie Francis Rivera, Lois Smith, Dawn Spears, Ramani Sripada, Stefana Stokes, Keita Sullivan, Linda Tortolero, and of course the AGM staff. So please, if you would just take a moment to stand up so that you can be acknowledged. Don't be shy. Thank you so much for your contributions today. Could not happen without you. So a great way to start us off today is to hear from a leading voice in our community. We are pleased to have with us Carla Nicholson. And Carla is the Executive Director of Haymarket People's Fund, which is committed to strengthening the movement for social justice in New England. Carla has left some materials for you if you have more, would you like some more interest to learn more about Haymarket People's Fund, which is in the back table there, so please take a moment to pick that up. Prior to entering the social justice philanthropic field, Carla also served as Assistant Director at the Fenway Community Development Corporation and has served on numerous boards, including the Mass Association of CDCs and the Boston Arts Academy, another arts connection. So please join me in welcoming Carla Nicholson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Probably little known to many of you, I also have an arts background. For 2 decades, I was a graphic designer, so I am very excited to be here today. And I just want to emphasize the fact that culture started our day-to-day and how essential that is to people of color in philanthropy. Culture, as a lot of people know, is a way of life. As people of color, it's very much the center of our lives. Jeff mentioned food is coming, music, dance, and I could go on. And we have to embrace that. It's not just simply this other thing that we do after we leave our jobs, but it's very central to who we are and the way we do what we do. At Haymarket, it's actually a principle, one of the principles of our work. Every day as grant makers, we do the work to move resources into our communities. This makes us gatekeepers, which is not necessarily a bad word or something that's wrongful, but instead really taking on and realizing what that responsibility means. We're working to resource communities of color that are oftentimes in very dire situations. And so we're very connected to that work because these are our communities. And if we think of the work that we're doing and the way of life and the culture, the rich culture that is happening in the community, then our responsibility is even deeper in terms of the work that we do. And I can't emphasize enough the way we do what we do. Grant makers of color don't just take this work on sort of by rote. You know, many people have had the wonderful experience of having mentors and being part of programs to help develop them to do these jobs. And while that's wonderful, there's something that goes without saying in terms of how we do the work that we do as grant makers. We take it very, very seriously. There's a real responsibility that we carry and a belief in almost all of us that we can really turn the tables. The status quo is passé. That's not the way to do this work. There's a construct that we're really struggling and fighting against, and I will name it. It's called racism. It's very prevalent in this country. It thrives. And you can see through the work that went on with Occupy Boston and a lot of other ways how that keeps continuing to happen. But we as grant makers, especially those of color, are in a very unique situation where we can impact that work because of the way we do our work. We also realize the richness that exists in our communities. That's the culture, that's the lifeblood. And also the people in the community really understand a lot of why they're in the position they're in. They don't need an analysis necessary to understand that. They live it every day. And we have been put in these positions so that we can make things happen. It's really a belief that I hold very true, that this construct was put in place and it can be eradicated, it can be unraveled and undone. And that's the work of what we do. As Jeff shared with you, Haymarket People's Fund for almost 40 years is an anti-racist, multicultural foundation. And when we talk about really strengthening the movement for change, it's not just rhetoric. That's something that we really know and we've seen over almost 4 decades that can really make a difference through the grant making work we do, through our grantees really taking what they know and the way they do what they do in the community to really start to create change. And it's very, very essential. So grant making, fundraising, capacity building are all essential elements of what we do. But as I can't keep emphasizing enough, there's something very innate in us where we really understand what our communities need. At Haymarket, we really look at the root causes of injustice. It's not enough just to give out resources to an organization and then sit back and wait for things to happen. We have to get at the core, at the essence of what's going on. And that's any cause. If you pick up materials that we have in the back, in the center of our newsletter, we have a list of all the grantees we funded and the work that we've funded them to do. And no matter what the cause, whether it's around school reform or environmental justice or food justice or domestic violence, the thing that ties all that work together is the fact that, we're asking all these groups to look at root causes, really look at the heart and the essence of why you're doing the work you're doing and understanding what caused it, because then you can move toward actually essentially making a change. Our work is much more than a mission statement. We have grants, all of us have grant cycles, we're all funders. But we have to sometimes take a step back and look at our work in a real big picture way and really capture what we've learned so that we together, not singly, I'm not saying that Haymarket is just like leading a charge alone, no. Together, we have to take a step back and really capture what we've figured out, what we've learned, and really stir that pot and figure out how together we can move toward making a really deep change. You name social justice movements, and people of color have led them, and they continue to lead them. So we're doing the work that we know has to be done, and we're doing it in a unique way. I brought that up because I wanted to share something with you, something really exciting. Out of the 40 years that Haymarket has been in existence, at least half of that we've spent on what we call an anti-racism journey, really looking at the root causes, really building and developing leadership of color, really helping our grantees to do the work that we've decided to do in our foundation as well. And that's really serious. We're not just sending out grant criteria and saying, look, you go do this, and we'll sit behind our walls and just do business as usual. That's not what's happened over the last 2 decades. We also, because of many of you in the room, have had the ability to take the time to write that story. And so that is something really, really essential that I would say that everyone needs to do, really document and capture your work. This fall, we're going to be sharing that story with a lot of you, and we want it to really resonate about how we're going to create change by doing it together. not alone, not just one organization or one foundation, but all of us. And even beyond the philanthropic world, we're looking at what we do in our field, but it's going to take much, much more than that. And so I wanted to share with you just an excerpt from our story. The name of it is The Courage to Change, the journey towards anti-racist philanthropy at the Haymarket People's Fund. In 1998, Haymarket People's Fund, a social change foundation created in 1974, embarked on a deliberate process to undo racism as ingrained in every aspect of its organization. This open-ended process has transformed the structure, staffing, grant making, and fundraising activities at Haymarket. Over the past decade, Haymarket has rewritten its mission, changed its leadership structure, and taken steps to shift its organizational culture. As a result, Haymarket is now a very different organization, one in which the leadership of people of color is not only unquestionable, but in fact, it is ingrained in the essence of the work that we do to co-create and continually redefine an organizational culture that reflects our anti-racist practices while unity is built. Now that's really saying a mouthful because we're doing that in conjunction with all the work that we do. And I'm very excited to share with you the cover of what will be our booklet in the fall. So we'll be all over the region, hopefully even beyond that, sharing with people this story. Once again, not to be prescriptive, but to get people on board to do the work that we know that's essential. We chose to take this on within the walls of philanthropy because we understand that we're wielding a lot of resources and power. In addition to taking on race, we realize that data speaks very loudly in our industry. And so what we've done in addition to capturing this story and really documenting it is that we've started a process to really demonstrate the impact of this type of grant making in our field. So we have a wonderful doctoral student who's created an evaluative model to look at not just the quantitative, but the qualitative aspects of how our work has occurred. So there'll be all sorts of storytelling and focus groups and, literally counting and looking at the progress that has happened because we're doing the work the way that we do it. And we'll be glad to share that as well because we think it's really essential. For the first 20 years, we looked at the work through what we call the social justice lens. Then the second 20 years, we see it through an anti-racist lens. The work is not different. The work is still looking at the same vision. We want to create change in our communities, and we realize that we can do it. So we're really excited about this, and my charge today is to get everyone to understand that we've got to do this all together. There are amazing things going on. We have a wonderful social justice funders network, an economic justice group that many of you are a part of. We have the affinity groups that you'll be hearing from very soon. And each and every one of you have a role in this, even beyond this room, to tell others about the amazing things that are going on in New England, right here in our city in Boston, and how we can all be very courageous and take this transformative journey together and really change the way people think about the field of philanthropy. So thank you so much for this time today with you.
Are there any questions for Carla? Lois?
Absolutely. Lois, who's here all the way from Western Mass, asked a question. Well, Central, yes, Central. Yes, exactly. So she asked a question about some of the coalition building that's going on. So I talked for a moment about the Social Justice Funders Network. That's one place that is happening. And it's not that that type of group with funders coming together is something new. It's happened before. But what's really exciting is this group, this network of folks that have come together have decided to make it a learning network. So together, we're doing the work where we can share, we can support one another. We're building relationships, so it's not just about, oh, what do you do at your foundation, but getting to know one another as people. And so that's really exciting. And then the Economic Justice Funders Group, which sprung out of that group, is all about action. So that group is very new. It's even newer than the network is. And they're really targeting and earmarking what do we work on. So it hasn't been determined what it's going to be, but it's going to be powerful. And then one thing, I'll toot Haymarket's horn, and I'll talk about the fact that we have annual grantee gatherings. So out of that connection through this network of funders, all these wonderful things have bubbled up. And one of those is a partnership that Haymarket formed with Episcopal City Mission, the Burgess Urban Fund. And we've partnered because a lot of us share the same grantees. And every year we need to figure out how we can give them the support they need to build their capacity and to give them the technical assistance that's necessary. And we're doing it in a very unique way. The grantees are helping to plan it. So we're not telling them what they need to do, they're deciding. And then they're also doing a lot of peer-led workshops, which I think is really significant. So we've been doing that for the past 2 years, and it's amazing. The first year, the focus was movement building, really talking about what that is and how we all contribute to making that happen. Last year, we did a lot of breakout sessions where there were specific things that they felt they needed technically. And now for the third year, they're beginning the process to determine what they want to do. So I'd say a lot of that's going on, as well as there's a new Black directors group that has just emerged locally. And so word of that will be getting out and spreading around because we have work we need to do as people of color. So we've got to come together. It's not just going to happen miraculously. And so it's important to have these spaces and to have these forums. So I'm glad you asked that question because the work has got to happen in coalition. No question about it. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Could we just give one last round of applause for Carla? Thank you. So I'm Alistair Malone, and I'm the Nonprofit Partners Manager at AGM. I'm going to lead you guys through a group activity. You guys have been sitting for about an hour, except for those people that came in late. I know who you are. So we just want to get you up and get you kind of moving a little bit before you guys sit back down again. So on my left, we have two different questions. We have, how do you feel right now? And what are you hoping to get out of tonight's event? So on your table, you guys have Post-its. So if you want to take a Post-it and put it in the box that delineates what you're thinking. So say take a blue one and put it under proud if you're feeling proud right now. I think we just want to really get a sense of how you guys are feeling and get you guys to understand that we care about the learnings, but also how you guys are doing as people. So was that clear? So for how you feel right now, there's proud, energized, optimistic, frustrated, expectant, and doubtful. But if none of those describe how you're feeling, there's the other category, and you can feel free to write on your Post-it how you're feeling. And then what are you hoping to get out of tonight's event? So be heard, learn something new, be part of planning future programs for my community, meet new people, have a good meal, and other as well. So if we could take just like 3 to 5 minutes to do this, that would be great. Thank you, guys. Don't be shy. Cool. So if we could have people start sitting back down. So as I'm looking over to my left, I see a lot of people are feeling optimistic and expectant right now. There are some people that are feeling other, but I'm not going to go into that. And then out of tonight's event, people really want to learn something new and meet new people, and there's other portions for having good meal, being heard, and being part of future planning events. So that's all great. So thank you guys for doing that. I hope you guys stretched your legs before you guys are going to be sitting down here for a little bit more. So thank you guys for participating in that. I think we're going to move into the next portion of the program. So I invite Angela Brown from the Himes Foundation up.
So now I wanted to see if we can all turn to a bit more of a reflective part of our program. We've gotten up and really just to pay homage and remember someone who's very dear to our community as in the grant makers of color community, and that's John Sarvey, who addressed this group last year. It's hard to believe it's already been a year. Well, it hasn't been a year, but it's a moment, and I was just so appreciative to AGM to start off today's program with the emphasis on our humanness, on culture, and bringing that into this space, this wonderful, wonderful space that we all share today. And sharing that joy, but also knowing that sometimes there's pain. There's always pain as well, along with the joy. And so we're just going to reflect with a moment of silence. John Sarvey was active member of philanthropy, both as a Himes trustee, as someone who brought unabiding curiosity and warmth to all of his interactions with the Himes staff and other board members, and also with members of the grant-making community at large. So let's have a moment of silence. And as we re-enter the presence of each other, our colleagues, just to hold on to what we share today, I'd extend that invitation to us all. And now I'm going to segue to our next part of our time together, which right now we're going to have a few quick reports on the state of our community, grant makers of color, collaborations, and leadership that is already going on in our area. And I'm going to kick that off with, I guess Dahlia was not able to be here, our fearless leader of the Associated Grant Makers Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So I'm going to give a quick update on that and then hand it off to colleagues. So just to let you know that the Associated Grant Makers does have an advisory committee for equity and inclusion chaired by Dahlia. And we've been working hard, so I'm going to give you a couple of snapshots of what's been going on and also what the future outlook is. And so in terms of recent activities, the group had a wonderful, really half-day training interaction with a person named Vicki Rosenberg with Transform Michigan Philanthropy, and really heard about an effort, a very intentional, deep effort going on in Michigan to look at grant making and how we could, players there could lift up a greater emphasis on diversity and inclusion. And she left us with messages of both how to go and how important it is to build out a roadmap and what might be some entry points to doing that. As well, the committee took that information afterwards and broke out into some groups. I was working with Delia and others on developing a definition, which we need to bring back to all of you, but the work is underway, and we'll be presenting that soon. to kind of get folks buy-in. And what do we really mean by diversity and inclusion and philanthropy? What is it we're trying to move the needle on? So that work is going on. AGM continues to connect with and participate with the D5 Coalition, which is this national entity that's looking at ways to drive more purposeful, intentional approaches to equity and inclusion within philanthropy. Some elements of the work that we're teeing up now and want to talk with you all about are really 4 elements of that work. One is leadership. Really, how can we engage all of our different foundation CEOs? We've just heard from Carla, one of our CEOs, but getting many other CEOs involved. How do we advance and identify policies and practices drawn from the broad scan of the sector that could be adopted inside of our organizations and in the field as a whole? How do we talk about diversity and inclusion practices in philanthropy? How do we message that out? And then finally, AGM has been invited as part of this work to submit a proposal to D5 to implement some kind of a regional strategy. So really the timing is ripe to kind of put some meat on the bone as to what that strategy might be. So as you're gathering, AGM has a really, I think, a wonderful opportunity, has representation, has relationship with the D5, participates on the leadership team, and now it's like, how can we move this forward? What do we want to do? And so I'm now leaving you with a little bit of a call. What do we want to do? We're in this together. As Carla has pointed out, we can do some things. We can really address long-standing issues, but also issues that show how grant makers of color and inclusive practices can lead to innovation and to movement. So with that, I'm just going to say it's a call to action. Think about what is the next step that would be personally interesting to you. Let the staff know, let Jeff and, forgive me, our new director of programs, what your name is, there you are, yes, know, and we'll be happy to try and put those things into action. So thanks, and now I'm going to hand it to, who is next? Excuse me? Hey, Hershey, yes, you're up next.
Hello. So hi, my name is Hershey Basuego, and I serve as co-chair of APIP, which is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in Philanthropy. My co-chair is Ramani, who was introduced earlier today. And I think all of the affinity groups have been asked to kind of report on or give a little context for where we're at today, and also why we're excited to be here. So just to give a little bit of context in terms of structure, APIP is a national organization that has 10 regional chapters. So APIP Boston does programming on the local level that works in service to the broader mission of building democratic philanthropy and advancing Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. So in terms of programming at the local level, what has happened historically is social events, networking, as well as more content-driven events like funders briefings, which we'll have one later this fall. And one thing that APIP has been involved in generally is inspiring philanthropy amongst our community members. So there's a campaign at the national and local levels to seed and maintain giving circles, which are groups of individuals that come together, pool their resources, and collectively decide how to distribute those resources on behalf of their communities and issues that they care about. And so in keeping with this mission of building democratic philanthropy, we're building individual philanthropists who are increasing resources to communities who are typically, as Carla was saying earlier, under-resourced. So I guess that's just a highlight of one element of APIP. If any of you are interested in learning a bit more, feel free to reach out to Ramani or myself. There will be a lot of opportunities in the near future, actually, to get involved with some programming. Let's see. So I think that's it. Again, we're really excited to be here, really excited to be building community with everyone in this room and beyond, and looking forward to identifying ways in which we can come together and work on behalf of our collective community. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Dawn Spears, who is co-chair of Native Americans in Philanthropy and is Native Arts Program Manager at the New England Foundation for the Arts.
Hello, good afternoon. So just to give you a little background on Native Americans in Philanthropy, we are, well, NAP. We are a national Native American membership organization that through engagement and strength of its connections, we power reciprocity and investment in Native communities. Our membership consists of tribal communities, leaders, tribal giving programs and foundations, both Native and non-Native nonprofits, individuals, and partner organizations and affinity groups, such as JAG, D5, as was mentioned earlier. We are a growing circle committed to beliefs, traditions, and gifts of Native peoples, following a system that includes engaging, educating, and empowering our members. We offer member services that include a range from webinars, discussions, we share, I'll say, innovative technologies, things, lots of things. So I'm not going to read everything on this list I have here. One thing that we do offer is annual events. So we have our annual institute each year, and recently we had one in Tulsa, where I guess I'll say one of the highlights was that we released a report that was called Native Voices Rising, Organizing and Advocacy Work in Indian Country, which I've also brought copies of, the link to this information if you're interested. And the other report that was released is the Minnesota Native American Nonprofit Economy Report. So this is one of the things that NAP is really proud of, its research work. So we encourage you, our colleagues in the work, to become a member and take advantage of one of our free services. We also offer special programs, things that will help. I have to find where I have this on my list here. Like our Art of Reciprocity program, which is really good for nonprofits, and our Native Culture and Context, which is really good for just basic philanthropy. I'd also just like to ask that you check us out, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And in thinking about how what NAP would like to get out of this relationship that we have here, the one thing that I really would say is that we're looking for ways to leverage our resources and our learning, and we invite you to initiate conversations with us and sharing on what we can both do in respective communities and see where some of the synergy and collaboration works best. And with that, I'm going to announce Bethia, the New England Blacks in Philanthropy President.
I think I'm pretty loud. I think you can hear me. Oh, you're recording, right? So, good afternoon, everyone. And for those who are looking at me and wondering, yes, the answer is yes. So I'm just going to move on from there. Thank you so much for inviting us here. We're very, very excited to give this sort of offering of where have we been for the last years. Some of you have been wondering silently, like, where the hell is NEBEP? And some of you have been kind of loudly, thank you, saying, where is NEBEP? And we have been doing many things. We've sponsored many events in our interim when we've not been out there. But most of all, we've been trying to figure out who are we and where are we and what is our work to be done. We worked with Next Street for about a year and a half. We got a small grant from TBF to work with Next Street to really figure out a strategic plan and to land. It took us a while to determine how do we stay best in our lane and what can we do to be responsive to the fullness of Black communities. Therefore, we envision our work staying at the forefront of our community. Too often, NEBIP was pulled, I think, in other directions, pulled to other people's missions, asked to adhere to messages that weren't quite our own. We see our organization, again, staying in its lane, supporting Black communities, supporting Black philanthropy, and using this as a platform to revitalize not just our people, but for everyone. Basically, we see our work as a paradigm shift, and that's one of the words that our 5-person leadership team has been using. A paradigm shift to really make the philanthropic community more transparent. And sometimes that's a little bit scary because we're not as transparent as we think that we are. How are we going to do that? 3 things that we're going to engage in. Some of these things you've heard a lot about. Informing, we really are going to stay in our lane, and we are starting to embark on this message. We're going to be working with the University of Southern Cal to create a similar report that Liberty Hill in LA created, the State of Black Giving, and looking at giving Black, demystifying Black philanthropy. We're going to engage in that in the fall, and we hope that you will be joining us in that program. We also see ourselves reforming philanthropy. How are we going to do that? We're partnering with APFI to bring to Boston, hopefully this fall with funding, so many of you will be seeing me, Responsive Philanthropy for Black Communities. This is a program that APFI has been giving for the past 2 years. It has worked well in Philly. It has worked well in Chicago. They've also engaged it in New York. We want to bring that program here. How are we responsive to, and really be responsive in our philanthropy to Black community? And lastly, transforming philanthropy, giving Black. And how do we demystify philanthropy? A lot of my conversations lately have been taking place with philanthropists, not so much of the people in the room, but actual donors, and trying to understand how do they see themselves in this work. So why are we doing this, and why did we change up? We felt that we needed to get clear and needed to really create a backdrop for our own destiny and resist living out someone else's fantasy of who we are. We know that sometimes our community, and we hear it all too often, appears to be fragmented because philanthropy sets an agenda that's usually based on our deficits and not on the community assets. So we wanted to make sure that our community assets were paid attention right up front. Too often we have heard from our executive directors that not only is the agenda set outside of our community, but sometimes there's a one-size-fits-all sort of suggestion on how we work together. As we've been talking to a number of sometimes struggling, but other organizations that are doing okay, most Black EDs kind of feel like, where are we in this conversation? And it's not a one-size-fits-all. But we also know that in our hearts we are capable, and everyone in this room is a part of this, and fully equipped to manage ourselves and become the vibrant community that we need to be. Therefore, we see NEBIP as a convener, not a competitor, who will be a safe space to bring together tools that we can totally be ourselves. We know we can't do this work alone. We invite you to do this work with us. We invite you to join with us to engage in an authentic conversation about race. Too often this conversation gets muddled down and it's not authentic, and we all can bring something to that conversation to shift the paradigm in philanthropy. And that's where we want to go. Not merely diversity, but how do we build equity? And that's why we feel that the Responsive Philanthropy for Black Community is a very important program. We have all heard and said these words before. We want to shift the paradigm of power, but too often we get muddled down and we're stuck in this place. So NEBIP, we're ready to move, we're back. We're seeking a way to really transform philanthropy. We're clear that we do not have all the answers. We're clear that sometimes we may not even have all the questions, but together we can have the questions and the answers together. We feel that this is a great time for us to roll up our sleeves. We're back, and you're going to hear from us. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite up Nahid Torres, the program officer from Hyams, and the NELIP co-chair.
We believe that through promoting strategic investments and enhanced leadership, Latinos will be empowered to use philanthropy as a tool to address social challenges and create positive transformation in our communities. So how do we do this? We carry out this mission by creating opportunities to build connections and inform practice through quarterly cafecitos, which is our way of really creating space for conversation, sharing of content, and really helping us to inform our practice and build community. We also do this through our annual fall funders briefing. I hope some of you had the opportunity to attend that last year. Stay tuned for more details. We look forward to continuing the conversation with our colleagues. We have an 8-member steering committee. If my colleagues who are in the room who are members of that committee could raise their hands. So great, fantastic. And thank you. And over the past year and a half, we've engaged a consultant to really help us revitalize the NELIP network, to build out our governance structure and committee structures, and we seek more to join us. So if you're interested in learning more about NELIP and getting involved and finding more about the network, please meet me or any of my colleagues or raise their hands. But I did want to share that that we really look forward to working with the other affinity groups to learn from each other and to identify ways to collectively tackle some of the unique challenges faced by organizations led by people of color, and to really elevate their unique value add. Too often other people are telling their story and they're marginalized in so many ways and trying to have a positive impact. So we really seek, as NELIP and with our colleagues of philanthropists in color, to really help them to be empowered to share their unique value add and role in our community of Boston. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the report out. If I could invite Ramani Sarpada up to lead us in our next, the debrief of the survey.
Hi, everybody. I really want to thank everyone here. I feel so warmly welcomed in the new role I'll be taking on at AGM, and in talking to a couple folks, I just want to say I just feel such positive and loving energy from this group, and I really look forward to continuing to work together as grant makers of color. So I know as a grant maker, because I'm coming from Metro West Health Foundation, and our big thing was always collaboration. And I'm hoping that we can really maybe break that down and think on how we can work more closely together to really make a difference in our communities as a team. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about a survey. So we had asked everybody who was registering to fill out a survey in terms of their thoughts on what it means to be grant makers of color. And I'm really a little bit of a data nerd, and my partner in crime, Allison, is also. So thank you, Allison, for putting this together and crunching the numbers. But we had some it was a quick survey. We didn't want to take too much of people's time, but we really found out some very interesting things. We had about 34 responses. And the first question is about, have you previously attended a Grant Maker of Color event before? And we had about 50-50 where people said yes or people said no. So how many people in this room have attended a Grant Maker of Color event? Okay, so this must be like the higher end of the group, but this is my first Grant Maker of Color event, so it's really nice to see that folks are interested. And I hope for those of you who are new and just joining, that you will continue to be a part of this wonderful network. The second question that we asked is, are you a member of one or more of the following affinity groups? So we did have a good split between all of the affinity groups. So that's including all of the people, all of the affinity groups that you heard from. We have a fairly good distribution of who responded. So there's a big chunk of folks who are already connected. But we also know that there's about 50% who are not connected. And we're hoping that those people who are in the room today will continue to get involved and join in their affinity groups. That's a great place to start, to think about our identity politics and what it means to be grant makers and the community work that we want to do. So there's three. The next question is, what are the most important resources a race identity-based network should provide? And there was three that really rose to the top, and that was mentoring. Networking was number one, actually, then mentoring, and then leadership opportunities. So I think that we want to just think a little bit more, and also within the affinity groups, this might be helpful. I think number one is networking, because we often don't know each other, and that's a best place to start, is to try to get to know who we are. And then we can create more leadership opportunities, and I think that that's something key. Ultimately, I think if you don't already have a mentor, this is something that we should pursue, and I'm happy to help folks and think it through more once I'm at AGM as well, and how we can make sure we're achieving what we want to do as a group. Let's see. So question number 4 is, the purpose of Grant Makers of Color event is to bring grant makers of different races. And I think that a lot of the responses here were wanting to really give back to the community. And I think all of us kind of come to this work not for necessarily our own professional development, but we also want to be able to give back and make a difference in our communities. So I think that that's something that we should continue to work towards. And most of the affinity group report backs all wanted to do the same thing as well. So I think we all share in that. So the other thing was share one strength of the Grantmaker of Color community in Boston. And I think it was equally, people were very interested. They were saying things like it has passion, it's a small and welcoming community. But then the other half, the 50%, were saying that they weren't sure, that I don't know much about it, I'm not familiar enough with the community to share a strength. So this is something we want to change. We want to make sure that people are getting a lot more involved. So just 2 more questions. And then the next question is, share one way the Grantmaker of Color community in Boston can be improved. So you might want to listen to this. I think it's really thinking about some smaller and intimate gatherings, I think, so that we can be able to build trust with one another and have very deep conversations. I think that Bathia said it, and other folks said it, that we come together because we really are trying to make an impact. And I think this is one of the answers, that the number of grantmakers of colors must be increased. Any diversity fatigue should not hinder or block progressive action to make the sector more representative of people of color. So I think that that is really representative of what we want. The other responses on the other end were things like, I don't know enough about how Grantmakers of Color works to be able to answer the question. So we have a huge continuum of where people are. Last question is, please share any new ideas or existing best practices in building and sustaining multi-ethnic racial identity groups. So I think one of the suggestions that I liked, so I'm going to remark on it, is cross-cultural collaborations take time to build. We should begin by sharing who we are and participate in learning and organizing opportunities where we can make a difference together. I thought that that was just a great way to conclude the survey results. I want to thank everybody who participated in the survey. These really make a difference for us, and we're going to take this back and we're going to look more carefully and think about it in some of our planning. And we hope that you do too, as affinity groups, but as Grantmakers of Colors in your fields. So thank you very much. And our next item is going to be to take a little break, grab some food, and then we'll move into some of the facilitated discussions. Thank you.